Welcome to the 58th episode of PEEPanEIP, an educational video series where we learn about an Ethereum improvement proposal, upcoming upgrades, and the basics of Ethereum blockchain. I'm your host Pooja Ranjan, and today we are going to talk about NFTs. In a few minutes from now, we will have an overview of EIP-721 Non-Fungible Token Standard with our very special guest, William Entriken. He goes by the name of Full Decent on GitHub, Twitter, and probably some other social media platform that I'm not aware of. Well, thank you for joining us, William.
Thank you, Pooja. Wow, 58. That is quite a streak.
Yeah, right. In my experience, William Entriken is a big-time contributor to the EIP's repository, and he is also the author of EIP-721, which created an Ethereum standard for NFT. I know, like me, many others are looking forward to hearing about NFTs and the proposal 721. But in this show, we have this norm that we request our guests to share a bit about their professional background, like your current engagement and how you find Ethereum. So yeah, over to you.
Great, thank you. So my professional background is in finance and engineering. I worked for a minute at Google and for the United States Department of Defense. And I have experience in engineering companies, just buying and selling companies, mergers and acquisitions. This is where I came from long ago. And this is the beginning. I first came to hear about Ethereum from my friend, who's actually a neighbor and a high school friend. We were buddies growing up and still buddies. His name's Rob Leschner, and he started Compound Finance, which is the other half of blockchain. And so he was always telling me about DeFi and where this is going to go, and telling me before he even invented this space. And I never wanted to get involved with it. And I thought blockchain is just a terrible place where people are going to spend their heroin money to trade it for fake startups and illegal speculation and securities that are just completely breaking all the laws. This is Ethereum, in my opinion, and everything else in 2017. And then I saw Cryptokitties. I saw the first, for me, this is the first real use case of blockchain. And I said, oh, this is it. This is where we're going to go. And so getting started, I was very inspired by these pictures. And I just immediately saw we were going to go for 10 years. I just saw, this is the tool. We're going to use it a lot of different ways, and I'm here to help. I have a background in open source. I've brought communities together. I've worked with Google in open source. I was working on Linux many years before it was even a thing. This is back in the 90s that I started working with Linux. And I thought, okay, I came into the scene. I saw the pictures of the cats. I saw the future. And we were in this middle of an EIP fight of how are we going to standardize this? People had different opinions. And this is when I got started. And I said, oh, this is something I can do. This is definitely where I can help. This is the beginning.
That's quite interesting. And it's intriguing that you have a neighbor who started Compound Finance. Well, we love to hear these interesting stories. So I have seen like multiple pull requests from you. I'm sure we will be talking about that in a while. But for now, I understand we have got a wonderful presentation for our viewers. So without further ado, let's peep in.
All right, so this is really funny. So this is actually the same presentation I gave in 2018. I thought it'd be funny to just use the same one. Thought it'd be funny. So some of this is a little bit outdated. So this is the same presentation I gave in Shanghai, which was the first NFT presentation in 2018. It's really just trying to explain what it is that we're doing. So probably a lot more people know about NFTs now, but I'll still give you the basic introduction for people that don't know. And maybe we'll learn something. Okay. So everybody knows what tokens are because of ERC-20 and a lot of the innovation / fundraising ICOs. We don't even use the word ICO anymore. It used to be like the word 2017, you know, shout outs to sending Bitcoin to an address to get ERC-20 tokens to another address. And this is what everybody was used to. And so we're coming out with this new concept of things that are obviously unique, non-fungible. Non-fungible was a whole word that we had to pick. There were a lot of choices and creative choices on what that word could have been. And ERC-20 market back in the day was billions of dollars, just such a huge number. And as an inspiration, we looked at, you know, how does that work? And then where are we going to go? Now, obviously, the main feature of ERC-20 is that there's these tokens. They're created at some institution. I'm just explaining to you what blockchain is. Everybody gets it by now, but we want to review these real basic concepts because they really inspire and enable what it is that we want to do. So for tokens, you're giving them to somebody, and then that person is giving it to somebody else. This is actually a huge innovation versus how the world usually works for large finance. In finance, this arrow here is actually cleared through an entity. So if you're in the United States and you're writing a check to somebody in Canada, or let's say you're going to send it to Europe and it's going to be denominated in dollars. Even if you're sending cash, the cash is really just a claim on money in the US Federal Reserve. And so, in the Treasury, the Federal Reserve. And so the Treasury has rules on who can send money to whom. And if you're not a terrorist, the money just clears. If you're not a person of interest, money's just clearing. And you're not really going through a lot of headache with this. But there are many rules in this system. And so the money's actually going through a bank, through the central bank, or a lot of intermediaries that you might not see, even if you're sending paper. If you're giving paper from one person to another, there are many intermediaries involved in handing fiat cash from one person to another. You just don't see it. Here, in the decentralized system, the arrow literally goes from one person to another. The authority only is from this person here to this person here, and there's no other person involved. So this concept really enables a lot of stuff, and I just wanted to bring it back if it's not at the front of your mind. Here's some different tokens from 2018, their market caps back in the day, and just showing different things that are possible when you don't have banks or centralized authorities. These are projects I'm sure everybody's aware of. Let's get over that. And then the ERC-721 market, this huge market just came out with a total value, three companies, total value of $24 million. Just a huge market. This is in 2018, April, dominated mostly by pictures of cats. Now it is dominated by pictures of other things and it is way more than $24 million. So I don't need to sell you on how large this market is. Right now, Opensea has already displaced Sotheby's and Christie's as the #1 art auction house on Earth. So in 4 years or 3 years, they've gone from 0 to replacing 100-year-old institutions that are just arbiters of culture in the human race. I mean, it's just what Sotheby's and Christie's have done in the hundreds of years, Opensea has just bulldozed them. And we're only 3 years into this. So yeah, a few years ago, I was talking about how big this is at $24 million. Reviewing some various use cases. I know right now artwork has really been the limelight, but just putting some other ideas out there and we can get more into them. Pictures of cats is a pioneer use case. They are a co-author on the paper with me. I'm the lead author. But they're the originator. Dieter is the grandfather of NFT. I'm just the lead author of the standard. And we've got other games. There's going to be a lot more games coming. We also have identity. This is a use case that's not as interesting press release wise. Unfortunately, in crypto, there's a lot of control. There's a lot of media control. I try to really be careful about what I'm reading because 99% of it is press releases, even if it's news. So things related to identity or hard assets where people promoting it don't get a percentage, you're not going to see in the news as much, but they're super important. Microsoft is working on digital distributed identities. So they have that project. NIST has put out a paper that really explains a lot of these different use cases for tokens. And they're really going to power a lot of the future, a lot of things. And I've got some very fun use cases to share too. And physical goods. So this is custody of a physical good that it could be artwork. It could be your coat. When you go to the bar and you give your coat to somebody and you get a ticket, that's an NFT. So NFTs are not really just 4 years old. NFTs are hundreds of years old. And just happens to be now we're using blockchain and it's a lot more efficient. So same use case. Here we are creating an NFT representing a thing, and that person's going to give it to somebody else. there's two use cases for NFT. So I really wanted to give you these Steve Jobsy looking slides that are real simple, because I really want to drill in this point. This is a token, and here is a physical thing. There's a different way to do it. So you can trade a token for a thing. This is code check. This is called a custody token. This is a security. This represents a thing. So when you give your coat to somebody, you get a token. And then here you return the token and get your coat back. People have been using NFTs all of our lives and we didn't know it. So this is a code check. But the other model here is where the token follows the asset. So it can go with it. One example here, and this is a client that I'm working with, is Breitling watches. So if you buy a watch and it's a Breitling, then you get an NFT every time. And so when you sell the watch, you would transfer the token with the watch as a token, as a certificate of authenticity. So there's just two different models. This one is the token follows the asset. So if you have the asset and you have the token, it's authentic. If you have the asset and you don't have the token, I'm gonna quiz. I usually give this as a class. So Pooja, what happens? Do you buy purses?
Yeah.
You're on mute. Don't be mute. Do you buy nice purses with
Yeah,
certificates of authenticity? Of course. I love it. What happens if you buy a purse that doesn't have a certificate of authenticity?
Chances of being fake.
Even if it's real. Well, I mean, you don't know if it's real or not, but let's say you buy a purse and your friend gave it to you and you trust that it's real, but you don't have the certificate of authenticity. What is that purse?
I mean, it may be real for me, but I don't know if I can convince anyone else that it is real and I really own it.
So what's the consensus? Since you can't convince anybody else.
May not be really real.
It's a fake purse. A fake purse without a certificate of authenticity is a fake purse. Same thing with these tokens.
There's no consensus. Wow.
The consensus is real. You know, we're getting into philosophy now. You know, what is truth? Truth is, you know, a human construct. Reality is human, right?
Yeah,
the
like
realness
buying
of your asset is consensus.
Like buying diamonds, you don't get IGI certificate. Don't believe it is.
Yep. If you don't have a certificate, it's fake. So I'm just demonstrating these concepts that are thousands of years old, and we want to remember them, and we want to remember how commerce works when we work with NFTs. So here, in this example, we're moving this asset with a token. So this is a companion token. Same NFT, same standard, same technology, same Ethereum, same functions, different use case. The token goes with it, it's authentic. You lose the token, it's fake. Here, you're trading this token for a jacket. Totally different thing. So in the future, we're going to have identity and other types of use cases that are more infrastructure level, more enterprise, government use cases. And I'm very happy to share some of these wins with you, but they're going to be a lot less art, front page New York Times, front page Wall Street Journal. NFT has already been on the front page of probably every newspaper that's printed. I looked at, this is crazy. The Beeple sale has about as much of the front page as the moon landing. So we're not going to surpass that. There's a lot of hype. The hype is good, the hype is bad, the hype's a lot of things, but NFT has really got enough hype, and I don't think we're going to double it. They're not going to make the front page of New York Times 2 pages. So there's not like 100% growth potential in hype for NFT, which is fine because the future use cases are not going to have as much hype. As we get into government, COVID use cases, I'll share one of those. You don't need front page of New York Times. You just need COVID test results that you can trust, powered by NFT or whatever other technology. So this is a very basic presentation, just showing you what is this stuff and how does it work. I really wanted to just show you how I'm thinking about it, because this is how I was thinking about it before. This is before it was standardized. This was standardized in June 2018. This presentation is April 2018. So this is how I was thinking about it beforehand. When I got involved in this space, I was studying 2 use cases very hard. One of them is supply chain. So pharma specifically, how does pharma has a very complicated supply chain. And this is what I'm thinking about in 2018. I'm thinking 10 years in the future, because it takes about 10 years to change the supply chain technology. So the one is supply chain. Supply chain is really complicated, and they care about authenticity of products and tracking things. NFT solves these problems. So as we're standardizing NFT, we want to make sure that it's going to support these use cases. A second use case I studied was licensing of intellectual property. So I went to Licensing Expo. I saw a pre-screener for Toy Story 4 before it came out. They're trying to sell you the characters. Disney's like, all right, here's the new characters. Who wants to license them? This is intellectual property. This is going to be tracked digitally in the future. And NFTs is a great use case for this. So what we're building now, we, you, me, everybody, as we're building networks, technology, marketplaces, wallets, we want to have these use cases in mind, because there's a lot more growth and a lot more ground to cover here. So I want to look out. I don't want to look at just artwork. Artwork's had a very good run, but our next 10x growth is going to be with companies like SAP. That was a client of a client that I have, where implementing NFTs into SAP. Who uses NFTs in enterprise use cases? Microsoft. Microsoft Xbox uses NFTs. Not a lot of front page coverage, but there's just very large use cases out there that we want to support. So this is my inspiration for getting involved. And we're really trying to build a lot of things here. And so I just want to stay grounded on why are we doing this and how does human commerce work so that we can support it. I know other EIP discussions might get a lot more technical at first, but I want to start with the human and stay focused on it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this nice presentation. As you mentioned, yes, it is very important to learn about the basics, like talking about EIP 20 along with EIP 721 was helpful for many new users who are trying to just understand what these EIPs are and what are the standards available. And just a note for our viewers, we have recorded an episode on ERC and application layer standard with Anat Rolikova, where we touched a bit on EIP 20 and some of the other application layer proposals. So if you have missed this earlier, it's the episode 33 in PEEPanEIP playlist. You can find the link on the right corner of your screen. So I would like to open the platform for the panelists. I see a lot more participation for this particular EIP because I know this is very interesting. So if anyone has any question, please feel free. Maybe we can start with William Schwab. I see some of the questions are added in the document.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah,
I'll let you go. I just wanted to bring this up on screen in case we want to refer to anything.
Oh, that'd
so
be
I'm not
great.
going to see you, but I can hear you.
All right. You just see a picture of a hat anyway, so not missing much. You touched on this before, actually, but I actually wanted to open with a question about the nomenclature of NFT or not fungible token. There's constant Twitter debates. If you make an NFT, which is a one of n, as in the exact same NFT is replicated more than once, is it at that point fungible or not fungible?
It's absolutely fungible. It's non-fungible because it's numbered. So when you buy numbered prints, see, I'm always going to, anything that you come at me, I've been talking about NFTs for a little while now.
I'm not trying to stump you. Yeah.
No, you're cool.
I'm interested in your opinion. Yeah.
No, you're really cool. And the way I'm going to answer these questions is always to go back to something that existed, 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, because it's hard to debate with something that's working for 1,000 years. And so this is the inspiration I draw for answering your questions with some kind of authority. Don't trust me because my name's in front of something. Trust me because I've studied how commerce works and human behavior. So let's take some inspiration from the art market. The question is, can we consider different pieces of artwork as different, even if they're depicting the same thing? The answer is yes, because artists number their artwork. It's very rare that you will see something, a limited release artwork, where there's one of 1,000 and they're not numbered. Why? So I'm going to ask you, why don't people do that? Why don't artists make 10 of something, sell them, and don't put numbers on them? Why don't they do that?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Why don't they put numbers on their art?
They always do. And I'm going to ask you
Right.
why has nobody not put numbers on it?
Ah,
I got it.
I see the. Oh yeah,
So
go for it, Brian.
if someone comes out 2,564th number piece, they know it's not one of the original 10.
Right. And also, there's a thought, just magically in your mind, there's a thought that if you own number 5, that if somebody else, if you ever walk on the street and find somebody else with the number 5, you will have, discovered a problem. So the thought is, if you own number 5, you have exclusive claim to number 5. So I'm going to say, and I'm not an authority here, but I imagine that no, these are completely non-fungible. They are not the same thing. Number 5 is not the same as number 6. Also, you will notice that there's different value. So a first edition, a first serial number, a low serial number, or a low reproduction number is worth more. It's the first one. Now, for physical artwork, a counter argument to what I just said is that, well, for physical artwork, if you're reprinting, you're using plates, and the plates lose integrity over time. But for digital reproduction, they're the same. This, I don't have an answer for you. I like competing with myself here. But for most of artwork and for most things that are reproduced, and they're numbered if they're valuable. If things that are valuable are numbered. And if they're not numbered, a lot of people will suspect that the production is not limited.
Okay, cool. Did also want to ask a few more technical questions, which I'm happy you pulled up the actual specification right here.
Yeah.
There are a lot of interesting things vis-a-vis, like if you're going to compare ERC-20, so there's a lot more, I guess, maybe we'd call it body to ERC-721. The very first we can see kind of right here, even that the interface for ERC-721 inherits from ERC-165. What prompted the decision to put 165 into 721? Do you think that everything should be 165 compliant?
Yes. So as 721 got involved, I'm a very practical person. And so when I get involved with 721, there was some fragmentation in the industry, and we're not going to talk about that. The other standards that didn't get passed, because we passed with unanimous consent. I'm taking this as I'm from Philadelphia, this is a reference to the creation of the United States. A bunch of people went into a room, they fought, and then they came out and they agreed. So that's 721. And you don't shame anybody who didn't have the same opinion as you coming in, because you agreed coming out. In order to pass this standard, we had to create a lot of plumbing. And so my thought, when I promised everybody I was going to get involved with this, I said, look, we're going to publish this and it's going to get done. And that means if the plumbing is wrong, I will fix the plumbing. If the EIP process is broken, I will fix the EIP process. I'm making commitments left and right. If there's anything if the Solidity is broken, I will fix Solidity. So this is me working with everybody. We created a 2-week review process, which I stole from Swift. Apple has a Swift language. They have a great review process. That's where our 2-week review came from. We stole it entirely. And so that's because ERC-20 took 2 years to pass. And I said, this has to go a lot faster than that. So, or more than 2 years. This is recorded, so I published that somewhere. But there's a lot of years that took for ERC-20 to get passed, and ERC-20 had to pass immediately. So we created a 2-week review. Solidity had a lot of features missing, and so there's a whole section on things that we had to change to make this work. Just like you can see here, you referenced ERC-720 or 165. It's commented out because this code doesn't work on Solidity 0.4.20, which is the original. And so there's caveats. There's a whole caveat section on 721. Here are all the features that Solidity didn't have that we couldn't publish, that we couldn't fix in time for this standard. And so I was expecting, we published this, assuming that these things are going to get fixed in Solidity. There's about 20 at least changes we made to Solidity just to support this standard. And this standard's going to last for a long time. It's going to last for 10 years at least. So we want it to be correct and recognizable. And that directly has to do with 165. So 165 is the introspection EIP, and it sucks and it's terrible. And I inherited it and I couldn't change it very much. But it exists and everybody knows what it is. and everybody should use it. Say again?
Can I ask why the 165 hit, or is that too much of a tangent?
No, you're good. It hard codes, the ERC-165 hard codes in a gas requirement. You're not allowed to use more than 30,000 gas. I inherited this. This is not my idea, and it's fine. And everybody knows this is a problem. And you can't hard code gas requirements because gas will change. The gas costs will change for each instruction in the future. But you can ignore that part of the standard. Did I just say that? But you should still use the standard and just be practical. These are standards. Standards are meant to create a consensus between a producer and a consumer. So even if you bend it a little bit, or you do what you have to do, but you definitely want to support 165. Everything that has an interface should have a 165. In fact, Solidity is updated to support 165 built in. So when you use Solidity, there's a feature called, I think it's called you would type like ERC-721 interface select
type open parentheses whatever the interface is and parentheses interface interface
dot
ID.
interface ID, that's the one. So interface ID, and they didn't want to call it, like I said, well, let's just name it like .ERC-165. They said, no, this is the one. There's not going to be another ERC-165. We're just going to call it .interface ID. I said, great. So basically, ERC-165 is built into Solidity, which is great. Everybody should totally use it all the time. Now, there's some criticisms of ERC-721, and obviously you can't talk about 721 without somebody asking about 1155. And so some of these decisions were made to support the ecosystem. They're made to support everything. The goal here was not to make the best possible NFT standard. The goal was to demonstrate for the future how standards should be made and how we should inspire the community to build the other things that are missing. This is just a piece of paper, right? We need marketplaces, wallets, tokens, buyers and sellers, collectors. We're really inspiring a lot of things here. And so your small question was, should everything use 165? Yes. And also, even should EIP standards include interfaces in a standard? Yes. These are a lot of things. Should EIP standards use RFC 2119? Yes. So I look at this as a publication to not just make NFTs work, but also to make EIP work, because I'm vested in the EIP process, and I've been unofficially a reviewer for a lot of EIPs here. So I want a high standard for these interfaces and specifications so that we can use them. And that definitely includes ERC-165.
Is this the first EIP that included a Solidity, or ERC, I should say, that included a Solidity interface?
Well, I also worked on 165, so I think we did it there too, but I think so. I think we, started the trend here. We started a few trends.
Very cool.
Including having JSON schema standards. Everyone does this now. If you're going to talk about JSON, you might as well have a schema.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, I think this is the first one that does the interface in the code. Also, remember, before ERC-721, you couldn't really make interfaces in Solidity, because you couldn't use like pure and not pure. So pure is an important thing, or let's say view. So you can define something as a view. Let's go find a view function here. Here's a view, get approved. Doesn't change anything. You can call it from off chain for free. So get approved is a view. Before EIP 721, you could not make a view in an interface. You could not make a function in an interface and then implement it with a different, better
level of visibility.
Mutability requirement.
Oh, mutability.
So you couldn't.
Got it.
Your interface couldn't be view, and then you define it as pure. You weren't allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were, ERC-20, they're just listing functions and saying, here's walking you through it. There's nothing wrong with that. But I said, we could really step up our game if we just made an interface that was usable for specifications. So back in the day, interface was not really usable very much. People were using the word contract in Solidity to define interfaces. I said, really, the word interface should be synonymous with standard. An interface is a standard. An EIP, An ERC should be an interface. They should be one-to-one. And we're very close to that now.
Interesting.
In fact, I was trying to get into the EIP. This is cat herders, right? So I was trying to, and failed. In the EIP repo, I was trying to get these Solidity files, these interface files into the repo for ERCs. I know we're talking about moving ERCs and EIPs separately, and I don't like that. But if we can keep ERCs together, I wanted to get these Solidity files next to the ERC markdown files so that they could be machine readable. That failed, and I'm not salty about that. But as long as we can put it somewhere, as long as we can put it in a text, this is machine readable enough. You need to copy and paste it out of this file. And now, as long as you know that you've got this interface, they got the interface, now we have compatibility, which is the whole point of EIPs and specifically ERCs.
Very interesting.
Well, if that helps in any way, there is no hard decision on like keeping EIPs and ERCs right now. We are planning to revisit this idea after maybe 3 to 6 months down the line, because there are some work going on in changing the process and terms for the core proposal. So if that is done, maybe instead of ERC, we'll be moving out the core EIPs, though nothing is set in stone. And we are all open for discussion. Would love to have you in some of the upcoming meetings and discuss more on it.
Yep, I love it. And very briefly, just on why I care about that is ERCs represent application programmers. The consensus changes represent core developers. They're in the same room right now. There's a last call, should be a last call for EIP change, for changes to consensus mechanisms. If you're for a core developer here, the application developers are our customers. So I'd like to have, for as long as possible, the core developers and the application programmers talking to each other. I'd like to maintain that connection as long as possible, because when we separate this, if we separate it, the two are just not going to talk to each other, and it's going to suck. So I know when you have a big party, it gets loud and there's people you don't want at the party. EIP process is a little bit like that. You got a lot of people, especially if you're a core developer, you get all these people with these token standards trying to just publish all day. And I get that that's a little painful. And I'm not on the core developer side very much, but I do appreciate that we've been up to now a very close-knit community.
Right. We'll make sure that we should have like good trade-off. So we'll be able to like serve both the application and protocol layers. Sorry to just add these thoughts. So William, if you would like to continue with your question.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll ask one more kind of on the technical, and then I know you've got a bunch of EIP process questions, Pooja, so then maybe I'll pass over to you. But you kind of touched on this with what you were just saying, William, which is looking at the EIP repo. A lot of the new incoming ERCs are extensions on either 721, 1155, or both as an NFT extensions. What do you think about in terms of what should be in a core ERC, what should be an extension on that ERC, and maybe what shouldn't even be a standard at all?
Yeah, so a lot of things should be standards, and I think we should publish a lot of ERCs. My only concern is that I hope that they're high quality enough that, and have implementations. Unfortunately, I guess we're talking about ERC now. A lot of people just want to publish ERCs, and people are looking to EIP repo as a tech support. So they think, oh, well, NFTs exist, and there's this, and they start by reading 721, and they're like, okay, well, I want to make something else. I want to make gambling. So the first step is go make an ERC about gambling, and then open a discussion there. We don't want that. We don't want people opening ERCs to learn about Ethereum. I don't know if that represents everyone's opinion, but I don't want that. What I want is people to go to other forums to learn stuff and then implement stuff. And then after you've implemented it, come and explain it, how you're going to hook into other stuff with a standard. Too many people are coming in with standards prematurely. And so that's why I want to defend, as a published author here, I want to defend the quality of this repo. I don't want a bunch of crap in here so that nobody's going to read. I want stuff in here that people are using and that's changing the world. So what do you want inside of a standard and what do you want outside of the standard? Well, For 721, we could not
I
decide on a
should
couple
probably
things.
warn you that I actually did write an ERC, which is an extension on ERC-721. I just remembered that.
I love it. That's good. I hope you implemented it. I hope you didn't just make it to.
I've got an
other people.
implementation. Don't worry. 4494. You
Thank
can
you.
take a look.
Which one?
4494.
Permit. Is high quality enough that I made it to the bottom without an obvious complaint. That's nice.
Thank you.
No, I mean, normally people are missing sections. They don't have code. They don't have backwards compatibility. It's like amateur hour. But no, you passed my 5-second review. So when we're working on NFT, we could not decide on two things. And so this is also a new thing where we had optional interfaces. So we had one core interface and we had two optional interfaces. If you know, the two optional interfaces are, one of them is metadata. A lot of people thought metadata is so stupid. Nobody wants to waste time putting metadata on NFTs. Okay, that's 2017. As we know now, everybody wants metadata. Every single
Yeah, that's
loves metadata.
like in retrospect, it's even hard to imagine that.
So again, I'm a practical person. So I said, if I'm going to deliver this, this will happen. So that's how I got the authority to work on this. Is I made promises and I kept them. I said, look, we're going to pass this with unanimous consent. So everybody wants NFT. Everybody wants NFT to be standardized. Everybody wants everybody else to agree on the same standard. So that's what I promised. And so in order to deliver on that promise, I had to factor this out because we did not have enough consensus for every single person to agree that a name, a symbol, and a token URI would need to be required. So this was factored out. Now, of course, nowadays, basically every single person uses this, and I don't know anybody who does not use this. The second one remains a heated debate. The enumeration extension is a separate one. Now, this one continues to be controversial. Some people like it, some people don't. This functionality is not part of 1155. 1155 could be used for NFTs. If you talk to the authors, they said, don't use it for NFTs. You know, I've talked to them, they've talked to me. And our official stance is if you're using an NFT, 721. Everything else, 1155. And don't use ERC-20. So that is my opinion, and 1155 team and me agree on that. So because of non-fungibles, there's ability to enumerate. Why would you want to enumerate? Well, one, it gives you total supply, which just tells you how many tokens exist. Every one of these things increases the cost of storage because you have to store all this stuff on chain. The total supply has to be stored on chain. And counting the tokens one by one has to be stored on chain. Counting the tokens for each owner has to be stored on chain. And people did not agree that all this should be stored on chain. Remember, Ethereum was very cheap back in the day and gas was like 1. So we totally could have stored all this stuff on chain back in the day. And in fact, the first ERC-721, the Sioux Squares, still not sold out. That one does use enumeration. So it does everything. It follows every specification, all the optional extensions. It uses them. And so for Sioux Squares, I wanted to just say, okay, you know, you can implement this. We're giving you a lot of requirements with 721. You can implement them. It's not a big deal. Don't cry. I know ERC-20 used to be real easy, and we've got a few extra steps for 721. And back then we didn't have Open Zeppelin contracts ready to go. We didn't have 0x cert implementation. You know, people weren't ready. There was no copy paste back then. So people are really thinking, do I want to spend this extra time? And so we decided to factor this out. We thought gas might go above 1 or 2 in the future, in the next 10 years. Ethereum might become constrained. Nowadays, NFT constrains Ethereum to the point where Vitalik is even questioning to kick NFTs off of Ethereum and put them on a side chain, which is something I don't like that he said. And we thought about that. You know, we thought about this, and your question is, what should be optional? What should be a separate extension? You really have to think long term. There's no NFT version 2 here. There's no ERC-721-2. So you really got to plan on this for 10 years. And we had to consider the gas costs. We had to consider that, and that's a great consideration for ERCs. We had to consider community usage, ecosystem development. And so these ones we kept out. Now, equally controversial, can you tell me the one function that does cost a lot of gas that we did include?
In enumerable or
ERC-721?
in the main?
In the main. And something that 1155 does not have.
Balance of.
Balance of. So balance of costs a lot of money. It doubles the cost of storing NFTs on chain. This one we included in the main specification. And this is probably the reason why people are even considering 1155 to use for NFTs, because of this extra cost of balance of. Why did we include it? Here's the answer. Because people don't like parsing blockchains to get events to build your marketplace. People don't want to create an OpenSea to just interact with a smart contract. It's hard enough to make your dApp. It's hard enough to make a wallet. Like, can we just give you one thing off the shelf that just works? And that's balance of. So why does this matter? If there's an NFT, like let's say Sue Squares or let's say Cryptokitties, which supports balance of, and you've got a wallet and you want to quickly know, does the user of your wallet, the customer of your wallet, have any Cryptokitties? You just hit the Cryptokitties contract with a balance of, and you get an answer. You don't have to parse a million blocks. You don't have to track events. You don't need a database. You don't need off-chain anything. You can run it directly through Etherscan API. You can run it through AWS blockchain API. Hit the API, you can hit it through Metamask. If you got a Web3 browser, you hit Metamask. If you don't have a Web3 browser, you use Infura or whatever. You hit it and you get an immediate answer. This is extremely valuable to the development of the ecosystem. And this allows people to make wallets quickly. And so, yeah, it doubled the gas cost, but we did it because we said, look, there's a trade-off here. And again, gas cost nothing back then. It was pennies to trade an NFT. Now it's hundreds of dollars, could be. So we thought this has to be in the main, because if we're going to have an ecosystem in 2018, 2019, 2020, God forbid, we get on the front page of New York, all the newspapers in 2021, they're going to need to have an ecosystem of a vibrant community of these marketplaces and wallets, and throw these people a bone, give them one function that they can call to quickly onboard people onto their wallet. So these are big choices. You know, we made these choices with in mind that we want this to last for 10 years, and that means zero fragmentation. So 1155 is a competitive threat. You know, I use 1155. I don't care. To 721. You know, everybody using the same standard. And if this was not done properly, we would have had some other standard that everybody uses 50/50, which would suck. You know, if people use 50/50 with 1155, it's not a big deal, because now we have enough people using the different, you know, OpenSea works. We have 10 different competitors to OpenSea. With Metamask, we have 20 competitors to Metamask. Back then, we had no competitors to Metamask or OpenSea-ish. So to support this ecosystem, we really had to choose to put this function in the standard. There's a lot of love in these choices, and that's why I worked on it for 6 months, getting this paper with basically just 5 or 6 sentences that are important and a bunch of fluff. That's the choice. Now for these other things, thank you for writing an extension, and thank you for making it backwards compatible. So you used requires here. Requires, you've got the signing standard, NFT, and introspection. So for me, this is an extension, and you're building in, this is a design win for EIP 4494 is a design win for ERC-721, as well as all these other extensions. So you're very welcome here to attend this party. You know, these extensions are great. And when you extend ERC-721, by default, it works with Metamask, rather than building your own thing, which is not compatible. There's an EIP called Atomic Swaps, Simple Atomic Swaps, or something like that, which is a competitor NFT, and nobody uses it. And you know, if it was built on top of 721, then you know, maybe. Let me just tell you that to get NFTs supported by Metamask took about 3 years. 3 years, and that includes front page coverage in every newspaper. You know, I'm not bragging here. I'm telling you about like the community accomplishment, not myself. With as much hype as we've generated with NFT, that still took 3 years to get Metamask to barely support NFTs. If you're going to make another ERC that's not compatible, and it's kind of in the periphery and it's a competitor, then it might take you more than 3 years to get Metamask support, if ever.
Yeah, for sure.
So I definitely support the ecosystem of ERCs. I support ERCs built on top of ERCs. I want to see more of that. That's why the EIP process includes the requires. That's why we, as editors on this call, make people fill in the required field. That's why we, as EIP people, make people fill in the backwards compatibility section and consider your requirements here. That's why we do that. It's because we're building on top of each other. That also means that ERC 165, when there's some discussion here, and should we remove the specification of 30,000 gas? This is a, this is a PR. There's opinions on both sides of this, and we will make a decision at some point whether we need to change or not change an EIP for something that's not technically implementable anymore. And when you do that, you need to do a reverse analysis on, I guess EIP doesn't support this yet, the repo, but there should be another line here that just, what requires this? And we can look through every one of those and all those backward compatibility requirements and make an informed decision here on what we're doing. And if you open ERC-721 and you get a nice fat required by, boom, 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 and you can look at all these things and you can say, how are these things connected? But yeah, it's a very careful process to decide what goes in your core ERC, what goes on these optional ERCs, which is kind of a new thing. I don't know if people will keep doing that, but I've seen other standards that are using that, and what needs to be a separate standard. But always your view should be that these things are going to last for at least 10 years, and you want to be really careful with this stuff. Put a lot of love in there. I stayed up many, many nights on many time zones, calling every single person about ERC 721. I took every phone call. Just, do you want this? Do you not want this? What are you doing? Why? Teaching people one by one, and that's how we came up with these functions.
Well, that's interesting. It's like we are looking for different use cases of that, and that was also in one of my question lists. But I think we have some question coming in from Alita. Alita, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what's the primary motivating factor for creating ERC 721? If you already had, what's the improvement, the primary motivating improvement?
Again, starting from the outside, so I had to update my personal website to put this answer right at the top. Here's my motivation. Verify seller claims and authenticity for most things you buy. This is my motivation for everything NFT and a lot of my business work, my consulting, related to NFT. It's not as good as Die on Mars, that's Elon Musk's. This is mine. Verify seller claims and authenticity. So I wanted to work on something that could really change the world here. This is the 10-year plan for NFT is, we are on schedule, but we have a lot more to do. And my motivation includes changing the way we do retail and changing the world of B2B commerce, the way companies work with each other, supply chain, licensing. So this was the inspiration for getting involved here. I saw this the first day. I saw the pictures of the cats, and I said, this is where this is going to go. This really motivates how, why did I do this? Why did I make these choices? That's the non-technical answer. Please ask again if you were trying to get a technical answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a non-technical answer is fine, but just kind of what part of ERC 721 kind of, for example, if ERC 721 had decreased or had implemented these methods of validation, right? Because you already have NFTs. So what is the movement?
Okay, so zooming out here, literally, and I know you can't read this. The important part of the EIP is all this stuff is the explanation of why you should do this. There's two reasons that this is done. One of them is explaining why are we doing this? Me being on stage, telling people what is the difference between a custody token and a companion token. Technically, there's the same thing. What is the difference for, why would you implement this? The why is super important. Secondly, is this word right here is interface and the ERC 165. This is what allowed Metamask to tell you you're trading a token when you're trading a token. This is what allows you to use OpenSea and buy and sell stuff and then buy and sell the same stuff on Rarible. So the compatibility was the only way this is going to work. My goal here is verify seller claims for most stuff you buy. Right now, Amazon has a competing product called Amazon Transparency. Basically, they stole the NFT playbook, but it's only for stuff you buy on Amazon from factories in other countries. So you would put stuff into Amazon, you put a sticker on it, it has a QR code, and then you verify authenticity. That's great, but I don't buy most of my stuff on Amazon. So my goal here, carefully chosen these words, most stuff you buy. I want all kinds of stuff you buy to be QR code scannable and verify whatever claims you want to verify. If you're buying food, I want you to verify that the beef is organic. If it says organic beef, I want you to verify that using your phone.
With the
Using
right
NFTs.
client, so, but with the right client, is that not possible right now?
It is, but if we're going to really, the most word here is the important part. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably somebody in the store, in a store in the US today, selling something with a QR code for beef with an NFT. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things, and somehow it might have missed my radar. I'm also working on an application of beef and NFTs, but they're not on the shelf. I'm sure somebody has done that. But if we're going to have a lot of things that you buy verifiable by a lot of people, we do have standards. You can't be going to a grocery store and downloading one app to verify one package, another app to verify another package. Nobody's going to do that. And so not only won't you do it, but the people that make these packages know that you won't do it, and they won't put the QR code there. I keep saying QR code because everybody knows what a QR code is, and there's a standard, and it works on every phone. iPhone, the most reluctant implementation of QR code, only like 2014 did they finally add it, 10 years after everybody else, finally does QR codes. So you can scan a lot of stuff and it just works. I would also like to scan a lot of stuff and not just pull up a web page, but also verify something.
So then
NFTs and other cryptographic techniques are really helpful for verifying claims. So if we can use this standard and and a bunch of other stuff, more standards to come, to verify seller claims, I'm super happy. Now, NFTs existed before ERC-721. Two great examples, well, a lot of great examples are on the bottom here. We definitely give props. If you're writing an EIP or any academic thing, give props to who's out there, because they need some love too. Cryptokitties is one, Cryptopunks is one, Decentraland is one. They're all different NFTs. Now, does anybody know how Cryptokitties and Cryptopunks, this is a great question I get all the time on Stack Overflow, Stack Exchange, Ethereum, is, well, if Cryptokitties doesn't support ERC-721 and Cryptopunks doesn't support ERC-721, then why do they show up on Etherscan? And why do they show up as an NFT on OpenSea? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Wait, why it's 721 compliant but not showing up on OpenSea?
Right, they're not compliant. These
they're
things are
not
compliant. This one is, Squares is the first NFT. It's under ERC-721. Everything else I'm citing here is not a 721 because 721 didn't exist. How are these things listed on OpenSea if everything on OpenSea is at ERC-721?
They manually built support out for it, I always assumed.
They hard-coded it. So the source code for OpenSea is, if it's a CryptoKitty, do this. If it's a Decentraland, do that. Otherwise, ERC-721, maybe 1155. So they hard-coded these couple things, and then every other one of them is standardized. So that means every marketplace in the future, from OpenSea to, and I got a whole list of them, Mintable, Mintbase, Zora, Artblocks, every single one of those needs to hard code CryptoKitties into their standard, into their platform. And every platform created from today until the sun sets, every single one of them will need to hard code all of these, everyone except Squares, all of these other ones here to make it be compatible. And then for the other ones, they just are standardized. If we did not have a standard, we have an M times N problem. That means M implementations times N implementations equals M times N connections. And so that is not going to build an ecosystem. What we want to have is an M plus N problem. This is where you have M things connected to end things, and they just all talk using one standard. So if M and M are small, like it was back in the day, we had Opensea, which was mostly selling Cryptokitties with a huge market of $24 million, and then one or two other projects, not a big deal. Now we have thousands of NFTs, dozens of marketplaces, and dozens of wallets. And so that means if we did not have a standard, we would have thousands, hundreds of thousands of implementations, cross-connecting every NFT with every possible marketplace. It would suck. Nobody would use it, let alone different chains, different standards. And when we start having side chains, before even all that, let alone non-EVM applications. So it would have really sucked to build this stuff. And the trade-offs and the reason that we're even talking about this is because we want to build a community. And we're not just doing this stuff for fun. We're not just like learning, Solidity for no reason. We're building EIPs and we're learning Solidity and we're leading, we are authors on EIPs, we are editors on EIPs. The reason why we're doing this is we're supporting a huge ecosystem of people that's going to do even a lot more than we did last year. And we're going to need standards for that.
Well, thank you. These are very important because whatever the standard that we are creating here, we are making here, is for the purpose of reusability. So if it is being used in different projects, that's what the goal is. Well, I know we have hit the time, but I have a few more questions. If that's okay with you, I'll quickly go ahead with that.
All the time for you.
All right. So my first question is about the non-fungible token standard. The proposal that we are discussing today. Like, this is one of a kind and was very useful at the time when we had only one standard. Now that you also talked about other different standards that is coming out as a variant of NFT. That aside, I want to just quickly check your thoughts on, do you think the EIP 721 is being well utilized for what it was created? Like in the proposal, it's mentioned for deeds.
Yes. So there's a lot of applications here, and there's only very few of them that get onto the news. So if you're reading a newspaper and you're reading about NFTs on the front page, it's probably because somebody sold something for a lot of money. This is one application use case that just works, it works great, and there's a lot of people understand it, and it's popular because people, get it. There's big money. New York Times, Wall Street Journal love to report on this stuff. Other newspapers too. And you might not know that there's a lot of other NFT applications that are just really powerful and really going to change the world. And they also take a lot of time. That's why, again, I have this 10-year plan that I always, that's my standard presentation, is what is the 10-year plan? And so these other applications, I'll just tell you a few of them, and you'll see that we're already doing them. So one of them is Xbox. Xbox uses NFTs internally. So it's not, you can't buy them, they're not listed on OpenSea, to manage royalty payment. Disclosure, this is a client of mine. So NFTs on Xbox allow you to track who owns which games and who's purchased what inside of those games. If you use Xbox, on your credit card, it just says Microsoft, all right? Whatever, it says on the credit card statement. That money has to go somewhere. It doesn't just go to Microsoft, they have to share it. And so they're tracking this with NFTs. This is really helpful because when you have a game, you might also need to distribute that royalty derivatively to rights holders, stakeholders. You might have music in the game and they get paid. Royalty management is a very big thing. This is used and it's set up. And like I said, SAP is another enterprise use case that implements ERC-721. And Pharma, so Merck Animal Health is another one that they're using it for tracking. It's either vaccines or immunization or vitamins or some stuff for animals. And they're using it in production. So this is a production application of NFTs for healthcare, animal healthcare. Human healthcare, changing the infrastructure for human healthcare cannot be done in 1 year. And there are several companies that are looking to use NFTs for tracking supply chain for pharma for humans. This is, again, it's going to take years and years and years. So I'm very happy with the progress just because I've seen some of these projects, clients of clients, I do advisory work. So I have clients that are working on these larger applications, and I see where they're going, and it's very encouraging. It's just that the public doesn't see it until it launches, and when it does launch, it doesn't get front page. I'll give you another use case. Quintana Roo in Mexico is using COVID testing with NFTs. So it's the health data is private, everything's private. It's in, but it's sort of, maybe it's like hashed or something. You just say it like that. It's hashed into an NFT that's published. Why would you do that? Well, you're timestamping it. I told them you don't need NFTs for this, but they made me do it. And so you have NFTs that are representing COVID tests, basically for the timestamping feature. And so if you're validating one of these tests, you know that it's timestamping is important for COVID tests because depending on when you took it, it affects your quarantine. So it's very important to timestamp. Blockchain is really good at timestamping stuff. NFTs are really great at attaching a hash of something to a token. So the NFT COVID application, it's super smooth. And again, it's reported in Mexico. You will find it a little bit in America and Europe, not reported very widely. And so I'm really happy with these applications, and these really fit my goal. My goal here is verify seller claim. So if you're buying a COVID test, if you're verifying a COVID test, you want to know it's authentic. And that's really easy to do with blockchain. There's a lot of problems with COVID testing verification. This is a special situation in the United States because we use these paper cards that you could just write yourself. But for the rest outside of the US, they use a different system. And in South America, this is a problem because COVID tests are expensive and you need them and you can't work without them in the industries. And you can forge them. So people are forging them. In the US, let's not talk about the US and COVID, but this is another use case where it's really helpful. In this specifically, we had a couple ideas that were really just trying to share very broadly: houses, artwork, digital pictures, collectible cards. Negative value, we have not seen any of these yet. Something where it's almost like it's like a hex, like a spell. You would put a token on somebody and they can't get rid of it. It might represent a debt that somebody owes you, or it might represent like a complaint, like a one-star review, a complaint. They can't get rid of that. You could put complaints on people using NFTs. I don't see this happening. And these were not the use cases. It does not say like, these and more, but we are definitely dreaming up a lot more than just houses and pictures of cats. Yeah,
Right.
very satisfied with our progress.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Like in the past 1 year, of course, we have seen multiple NFT projects coming up, and the use cases that you discussed just now, those seems to be really valuable, and using this Ethereum standard definitely add value. Thank you. So my next question is about the term ERC, like how frequently we are using ERC. So EIP-721 standard track EIP, that is one of the 4 categories of a standard track. Yet this is commonly referred as ERC instead of the meta word EIP. What are your thoughts on the usage of this term ERC instead of EIP? I mean, maybe why or why not do you think it's the most appropriate term to refer an Ethereum standard?
So ERC is Ethereum request for comment, which is based on Bitcoin request for comment, which is based on Python request for comment, which is based on something else request for comment. So the something RC has really a lot of lineage, and many people don't know what the letters stand for, and I don't tell them. But there's a very strong brand awareness of ERC. They know what it means. And I went to Miami. I went to Art Basel a couple of weeks ago for Art Basel Miami Beach. And I walk into the room and I say, I'm the lead author of ERC-721. People know what that means. So they don't know what the letters mean. They don't even know what the 721 means, but they know what the ERC means. And they know what ERC-1155 is, and they know some other ERCs. These are people that do watercolor. They don't own Ethereum. They don't own Bitcoin. These are people that do watercolor. They do hand drawings, and they know what ERC-721 is. So there's a lot of different values of these letters. There's a value for us, the technical community. I guess this is our audience on YouTube here. There's a value for the people that we make these products for. But I think the greater value is the people we make the products for. I think the brand awareness is really important. we're creating a brand with these things. Like here I am, I'm in a workroom, I'm in a conference room. I'm gonna pick a random thing that's for sale off a shelf. Reynolds Food Service, aluminum foil. Okay, so why do we put things on the boxes? For brand awareness. Here's the barcode. You know what that does. You don't know how it works, but that's the EIN UPC number so that they can scan it and sell this to you. They've got this thing here. They got this standard warning symbol. They've got the whole thing's in English, but this one's in Spanish too. 1,000 feet, feet and inches. Why do you use feet and inches, not meters in the United States? You know, for right now, ERC-721, the ERC is a conformance statement. So we're building a brand here. And when you're reading something, when you're buying something, this is a product labeling question. So when you're asking me, should we use EIP or ERC? The answer is we should use ERC because of the brand awareness. And because as product labeling, we want people to download it. We want people to open their phone, download a wallet for Ethereum, and we want them to look in the App Store description, does this support ERC-721? We want them to actually look for those words and make a purchasing, downloading, installing decision based on that. That's what happens when you have brand awareness. Also, I care about this stuff because I also wrote 2228. 2228 changes the name of Ethereum to Ethereum mainnet with a capital E and a capital M and no space between the N and the N. We should do this. These are things we should do. We should not call it mainnet with a space. We should not call it mainnet with a lowercase m. This is a thing. It's a capital M. If anybody's been to China and you've seen an iPhone store where the P is lowercase, that is not an iPhone store. So that's what happens. If you're on the ethereum.org website and you see mainnet with a lowercase m, what is this? So we should fix this. We should standardize it for brand awareness only and just use the word mainnet. So this is a final EIP. I'm working to update ethereum.org website. I've made PRs for every other EIP out there. If you have one, please accept my PR and use the word mainnet. But yeah, we want to make these words the same so that, and Metamask did make the change. So Metamask used to call it like this. Now they call it like this. When you're using Metamask and we're talking about Ethereum mainnet, we want you to see it like this and expect something. When you're using a wallet and you want to download it, we want to see ERC. We want to see ERC-721. Otherwise, it's off-brand, it's confusing, and it's fragmenting the market. It's hurting our Google search. It's hurting. It's not hurting because we're not doing it. It would hurt our Google search if we changed it to EIP-721. And we should update the Jekyll front matter here, or the Jekyll template, so that ERCs use ERC here instead of EIPs. But we're already published in so many places that this is kind of built into this one's 721. Probably, it's a lot of citations academically, but who cares? Change it. ERC-721, rename it. Yeah, we need brand awareness, and we need people to care about this stuff. When they're using their software. William has EIP 4494. This is draft 4494. So if you're going to download MetaMask or another wallet and you care about permits, we want you to look for compliance with ERC 4494. So yeah, ERC all the way.
Well, that's quite interesting. Because this is the only standard track EIP, which is like having so much of popularity. So obviously the marketing and branding is important there. Though I'm not sure if it should be other than treated differently than any other EIP, because if we have ERCs and core EIPs, still we use core EIP. We don't call it core 1559, but that's my thought. I totally agree. The word ERC has got fire in the jungle, and people are accepting it the way it is.
Well, this also includes this dash. So I got involved in this dash. This page previously did not have a dash here. It was just EIP-721. And some places use a dash, some places didn't. I said, look, things that are related to branding, we need to standardize, including the dash, including the letters, including the capitalization. Anything related to your branding, if we're going to build something, we're really going to change the world, We got to use the same words with the same capitalization and the same letters. Branding is super important. You know, it's going to look stupid if you open Wall Street Journal and they say EIP -721. Probably people won't even know what that means if they see it written like that. So also, when you search on Google for ERC-721, this page doesn't show up first because there's other stuff. And this is part of the reason. So I would like this page to show up first. You know, other people are kind of squatting on the name a little bit. And I'd like to see, you know, this ERC, but yeah, let's make brands together. Let's, you know, we're standards people, right? Make standards, work together, promote consistency, standards and style guides, you know, that helps too. Style, branding guidelines, style guidelines, standard, technical standards, these all of them go together. You really have to care because we're standardizing products. You know, we're caring about not just the technical people, but we're caring about the end user here.
Right. Yeah, standardization is one thing that we are strongly encouraging with the EIP group, of course, and we are trying to add these recommendations to EIP1. So people who are following it via EIP1 should be aware of. So, I mean, like, I know, I mean, I have found you very active in EIP GitHub repository that I mentioned earlier. So I really appreciate all the time you take out to make the changes, not only to the final, but even to the stagnant proposal, because they are being used, but it could not reach to the final status. So thank you so very much for that. And one last question from my end. Talking about EIP-721 and the standardization, I found the proposal has a section references that list other proposal discussion and examples. Of course, it has some Solidity references and other EIPs that definitely add value, but I suppose as per the present template, the EIP template, it is not a standard field anymore. Do you think it is something that can be, you know, considered updating the EIP-721 in future?
Considered a what?
Considered updating to 721 because this reference is no more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So one of the discussions, and I'm not sure that this is settled, is related to linking. How should you, one opinion here, not naming names, one opinion was every EIP should stand on its own and should not refer to anything else. That's the hardest stance that I've seen. That one, that's not a good idea. You can't write a standard and not refer to other things. We should not consider that any further. And the easiest way that I should explain this is because of RFC 2119. If you're writing a standard, you need to use words such as must, may, and required. And these words need to have specific meanings. Anybody who's writing a specification should use RFC 2119. And you should refer to 2119 to explain what these words mean. Sometimes people use the word shall and recommend, and they think, well, this is a standard, and if I recommend something, that means it's required. Otherwise, why are you reading my standard if you don't want to care about my recommendations? That is not what the word recommend means inside of a standard that is RFC 2119 compliant. So therefore, anybody who's writing a standard should link to and refer to RFC 2119. So the hard stance has been rejected. We need to allow some type of references in EIPs. The other question is, should we allow all kinds of references in EIPs? Should everything just be linked inline? You know, whenever we talk about something, just link to it. I don't know. I mean, this is more of an editorial preference or a style preference than a how do we do things, but I'll take the bait. Should we include references and links everywhere? No, we shouldn't do that. I'm telling you not as a standards person, but as a person who's written web pages. And when you have a web page like EIPs.Ethereum and has a lot of link juice, then and anybody can publish, then you're going to have a lot of spam, and people are going to link to their own projects with inline hyperlinks controlling the hyperlink text. There's already a little bit of that, and you're going to be a lot more of that. Anybody can publish a draft EIP, and these EIPs are, you know, ERPs are mentioned on the front pages of newspapers. Why can't I make my own EIP and link to my project and, you know, launch an ICO or some scam like that? So no, we don't want to have piles of links. Do we need to have a policy on what you can link to and not link to? Maybe. I mean, do you really want to enforce this as editors? But you're an editor, so set editorial guidelines, tell people what's spammy or what's not, and we want to include good stuff in EIPs. Personally, I lead by example. More important than setting a standard of how standards should be written, which I got involved with, of course, I wanted to demonstrate how standards should be written. And so when I organized my references, I wanted to separate them in the most useful way. So I think the whole purpose of this document is to inform people and to help them. So this is a document for people who want to implement non-fungible tokens. It's got an introduction, it's got some standard stuff, and then at the bottom, it's got extra reading, sort of like that. I feel like it'd be more helpful to you if you were reading this document afterwards. I'm holding Command on a Mac here, and just click, 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 and just go through, all this other stuff and read more about it. I feel like that's a helpful way to read this. And so I think this is a nice way to organize this stuff. It doesn't interrupt the reading. So if you're reading the text here and it talks, it mentions this and it doesn't link to it right away, and then you get to the bottom and it's like, oh yeah, there's more information about this. I think it's helpful. In other standards, they've just linked directly in line to other stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I think this format is helpful. And if there's editorial guidelines that are an improvement, then yeah, I think these documents can be updated to follow new editorial guidelines. There's been many corrections to errata to ERC-721. If you look at the history, there are just piles and piles of changes, typos, other stuff. So yeah, we can change this. In fact, there's a caveat, and I even wrote it in here. I said, look, Solidity is going to change, and I even wrote it directly in this sentence right here. The newer version of Solidity comes out, this EIP may be updated, and the caveats are removed. The specification will be the same, but the caveats will just be implemented in the code rather than, I don't know why I never did this. I think there's one or two things that are still not fixed yet in Solidity, but this is 0.4.20, so we can update this to 0.8. whatever, or 1.0 if it finally comes, and we can update these things. So yeah, I support you to update this to be more compliant with the style guidelines. I do not support just haphazardly removing things and making it less useful. Like for example, here's a specific specification on, it's a recommendation, but it's still specified, of 4 by, it's on the ratio of image sizes. Here you go. According to ERC-721, if you make an image representing your metadata, it should use a specific size of the image. And the image should be between this many pixels and this ratio. These are really specific choices. It's like, why would anybody care about that? The answer is because people are going to build websites like OpenSea and Variables, and they have to display your picture on there. So let's give people a little guidance on what type of pictures. Do you want it to be like 1 million pixels wide and 1 pixel tall? You could. I'm sure someone's done it. I'm sure someone's made it 200, to the whatever the largest number you can fit into a ping file. I'm sure people have done that. But let's just give you a recommendation and just give you a ballpark. And so I came up with, I cited 1.91 to 1 ratio and 4 to 5. Where the heck did these numbers come from? And how am I going to convince anybody to use a ratio of 1.91 to 1? That's width to height and width to height. Why would anybody do that? The reason why is because that's the exact ratio that Instagram requires. So, I hate Facebook, but I think they know a little bit about making usable images show up on web pages, including Instagram and phones. And so I wanted to cite that. And you are not going to read ERC-721 and think that I have a firm ground to stand on with this 1.91 to 1 ratio, unless you go read this reference right here, which is right here. And Instagram tells you why they chose that ratio and why you need to make all your images that ratio for Instagram. So I thought, yeah, that gives me a leg to stand on. And we definitely want to cite that. So removing all these references, including that one, you're not helping people. But if we're going to change the formatting or move it around, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah, we should have the guideline available for any author. And Your input I have seen like has been very useful in like updating these proposals in like past few years. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate William for you taking out time and talking about this proposal in length. Do you have any final thoughts or comments or suggestion for people who would be looking into the proposal and trying to implement that in one of their upcoming projects?
Yeah, don't be shy. So a lot of people just start reading random blogs or they type what is NFT into YouTube. Those are the worst videos. And they get scared of it and they run away. I want you to know, speaking to the audience here, that this stuff is really easy. I give workshops, my dad, who types in uppercase until a couple years ago, he deployed his first smart contract and dApp and connected them. So if he can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. And these classes are very short, it's a couple hours. You can go from no programming experience to deploying an NFT. I also run a community service hour. So my website is for.net, PHOR. And can I give you a link? Speaking events. So community service hour. So once 1 hour a week, including today, in a couple hours on Tuesdays in New York time, I just run an hour. So it's just a 1 hour of any questions from anybody, and we just do it live. It's real nice to just box all these questions into 1 hour because I get quite a few questions and I answer the questions. So for people that want to implement this stuff, don't be shy, reach out, hit me up, ask questions, break rules. If you're not supposed to make an EIP because you don't know where to ask questions, you make EIP, do it. And then it's our fault, the EIP people's fault, to go give you a better place to ask questions. Break all the rules, ask all the questions, get in touch with whoever you got to get in touch with, because we're all supporting you. All the people on this call, we're supporting you, the builders, and you're supporting our vision of changing the world. So get out there, make the sucky first draft that you can, share it with people, make it better, and launch, baby.
Nice. These are quite inspirational words. Yes, this is what exactly the goal of PEEPanEIP, the cat herders, and the Ethereum community in general. We want to invite participation. We want you to be a part of this revolution. Your contribution is always welcome. Like, join in, just don't be shy. All right. I hope that this episode will be very useful for many new and existing users and developers. And on this note, thanks to everyone who participated in the call today and our viewers for watching this episode. If you like this, hit like, share with people, slides, discussion too, and other links you can find in the description section. If you have any question related to this particular proposal or any proposal in general, leave us a comment and we'll try to bring that in one of the upcoming episodes. Subscribe to Cat Herders YouTube channel. See you all in the next episode of PEEPanEIP. Thank you so very much.